On this edition of the program, Kristi Noem out. Who's going to replace her? It's Senator Markwayne Mullin. Also, we have a conversation about the science of second chances. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for March 6th, 2026. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you from the San Francisco International Airport. Was planning on doing a little bit of an intro here for our episode. Did not expect it to be so jam-packed with news because the first domino has finally fallen. One of the original cabinet secretaries, one that has been encircled for quite a bit, is now an ex-cabinet secretary. The Department of Homeland Security, which is currently still shut down for those keeping track at home, now does not have a leader. Kristi Noem is out. Kristi, say hello to cricket, at least when it comes to your secretarial chances. What apparently was the straw that broke the camel's back was her testimony before Congress, wherein, in answering a question to Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, a question that was blessed by the White House, for the record. She was asked whether or not the $200 million ad campaign, which primarily featured her, was approved by the president. She said it was. Donald Trump disagreed. And so now we finally have a camel with a fractured spine. Before we get into kind of the Lifetime Achievement Award that she has gathered over the last year and change, let's just understand that this has been a campaign to get her out for months. It has been active. You've seen soft emotions of her handling of the Alex Preddy shooting in Minnesota, the sidelining of Tom Homan. And, you know, I've highlighted this for you guys. Just, you know certain articles that come out are hit pieces because of how they are framed, because of who is talking and who is not talking. There's no doubt that in an article, I believe this was the Wall Street Journal that came out, where Tony Fabrizio is quoted on the record, that is blessed by the inner circle of Donald Trump's orbit. And I would say Susie Wiles has her hand on that knife because Tony Fabrizio does not leak things. He is in charge of handling very sensitive information to the president. The kind of raw intel that goes into larger situations. Anything involving him does not come out unless somebody wants it to come out because he's not a talker. Susie Wiles is not a talker. But there's a lot of enemies that have been made by not only Kristi Noem, but also her little boyfriend, Corey Lewandowski. By the way, she didn't deny having a sexual relationship with under oath, which is fascinating. While her husband was in the audience. I've heard some gossip about that as well. DHS was poorly run. And beyond all the immigration stuff that you've seen, beyond, whatever the deportation quota numbers that were being driven by Stephen Miller, there's a lot of little stuff. And that was partially in the Wall Street Journal article about just blocking and tackling, like not signing deals that were on her desk for months and months and months. The steel that was needed to build the wall on the southern border, the price went up because she just took too damn long to sign the paperwork. What I am hearing now from DC, and everybody I know in DC is thrilled about this. I'm talking about left, right, and center. I'm talking about hardcore MAGA people. I'm talking about people that hate the administration. Nobody is mad about it. In fact, this might be the most popular thing that Donald Trump has done in his tenure, is firing this lady. But one of the things that I've heard is Corey Lewandowski's, quite frankly, earmuffs to all the kids that are listening, but he's an asshole. He's a micromanager, he's a bully, and he's not good at his job. And so when you have somebody like that is just, pushing people around and putting people on edge. I heard something months ago that people internally were freaking out because nobody was paying attention to the fact that he shouldn't be working there. He's a special governmental employee. He's only supposed to be working for 130 days a year. He was manipulating the logs and just disregarding the fact that he wasn't a special governmental employee. What I've been told over the last few hours is like, he just made a lot of enemies. There were a lot of people that just did not like this guy and therefore did not like Kristi Noem. But they were, look, they're terror twins together. There was no distance between them. And now she's out. We will see what that does. If I were the Democrats, I would use this as an opportunity to end the DHS shutdown, because you have at risk right now blowback from the Iran war, Homeland Security kind of stuff, and more safety that goes beyond immigration. Like right now they are holding out, the department because of immigration, but there are non-immigration things that you don't want to have the blood on your hands if something really, really bad happens. They were lucky that this shooting in Austin, happened on 6th Street at 1:30 in the morning. So it's, there's 3 people dead. Terrible. It does look like this guy was motivated by the Iran war on some level. But to be quite frank, as somebody who lives in Austin, sometimes people get shot past last call on 6th Street. So it's not a man bites dog level tragedy. That's not to say that one won't happen. And if that is the case, then Democrats are going to really, really feel it if DHS wasn't funded. Kristi Noem being out is a fig leaf. Take it, reopen the department. That's my opinion. Who knows whether or not they'll do it. We all know that the real answer is that the Democrats are going to get crushed by their base no matter when they make the deal. It's, a matter of when they feel like getting crushed. Let's talk about the replacement, Markwayne Mullin. Is he going to be better? He's a lot better liked in D.C., I'll tell you that. Former MMA fighter, once threatened to fight a union representative during a hearing, which is a really funny clip. In fact, Will, can you find that clip of Bernie Sanders going like, no, we're not going to do that here. Let's play that clip.
Now, let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior. As everybody knows, and it's here, and the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been. Always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be 2 consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every
No, sit down.
You're a clown.
Sit down.
Okay.
You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr. Chairman?
Hold it.
They got along afterward. In fact, that guy that he was fighting with spoke at the Republican National Convention. That being said, he's got a much better reputation, and certainly he's loyal to Trump. Trump likes him. He's young. He's good on camera. Trump likes that. Probably the only reason why Kristi Noem was there, although I never thought she was good on camera. And, you know, considering we're talking about an ex-MMA fighter taking this job, it brings a measure of respectability back to the office. So it shows you where the bar is with Secretary Paw Patrol being out, as she was referred to by the excellent 30-year Letterman Twitter account. We don't know. Here's what we do know is that Markwayne Mullin taking this job means that he is more likely to get confirmed, because that was the other problem with any of these cabinet secretaries being replaced now, is that they're going to face hard uphill confirmation battles. It makes it a lot easier if you confirm somebody that is from the Senate, because you get that Marco Rubio effect. You're not voting on a stranger. You're voting on somebody that you know. It makes it easier to take a tough vote, because you can say, look, I know Markwayne. He's a good enough guy, blah, 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 blah. I got a little more in the update about the senatorial replacement process, but we will get to that after we begin our interview with Jennifer Doleac. She has a brand new book out. Let's go ahead and throw to that. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the program Jennifer Doleac. She is the author of The Science of Second Chances, and one of my favorite people to talk about not only criminal justice reform, but also what I think is probably the most potent, undealt with cable of American politics, and that is crime, especially in big cities, and how to get real results out of it. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about the premise of your book. I know that this has been your area of research for many, many years, and you finally put it all down. Give us the log line here.
Yes. So I am an economist by training. I was an economics professor for many, many years, and escaped academia about 2.5 years ago to join Arnold Ventures, which is a philanthropy and policy organization. And AV is very focused on evidence-based policy. So I still think about research and evidence, but I'm no longer doing it myself. But yeah, I basically spent a lot of time as a researcher trying to apply the economics toolkit to figure out what works to make communities safer. So economists are very good at distinguishing correlation from causation. We're more obsessed than other social scientists are with that. And so we think a lot about running experiments or finding natural experiments that can tell us whether our policies and programs are actually working. And if they're not working, figuring out how to make them better. So that's what I do. And that's what the book is about. The book is really structured in a way where I step through what the research says about how to intervene at each stage of the criminal justice process to break the incarceration cycle and give people a real second chance.
What is the biggest thing we are doing wrong right now as a country generally?
I think the biggest thing is how we try to deter crime. So I think, we have a basic intuition, and I share this intuition as an economist, that people respond to costs and benefits. We're always weighing costs and benefits and thinking about the trade-offs involved in our actions. And one way to prevent people from committing crime is to increase the cost of committing crime. So that's a good idea. And the way we've tried that over the last several decades in the United States is to make prison sentences longer and longer. So if you commit crime and you're caught for it, then we'll sentence you to a really long prison stay as a consequence.
Yeah.
And that sounds like it should deter crime. But what we've learned over the past, again, many decades, is that people who are at risk of committing crime, the people we're trying to deter, are typically not thinking very far ahead. And so we can deter their behavior, but they're much more present focused than the average person. And so a low probability threat of a long sentence actually doesn't change behavior very much. What we need to do to change behavior is increase the probability of any consequences at all. And in a context where you commit homicide in this country, there's a 50 to 60% chance you're arrested for it, much less convicted, just an arrest. So it's essentially a coin flip. Lower level offenses, it's much
Wait, you can commit murder and it's a coin flip if you get arrested?
right. That's right. Yeah. And in some communities, it's much worse, right? So I think a big challenge in a lot of poor minority communities that are really homicide, part of the reason that we see just continued cycles of violence is the probability of getting caught is really low. And then also that incentivizes people to take the law into their own hands because they know that there's not going to be accountability. And so figuring out ways to increase the probability that people get caught faster will, I think, increase trust between communities and law enforcement and address that problem. But it will also deter crime. And we have lots of evidence that that's the lever we need to be pulling to have a big impact on public safety. And frankly, it's just the opposite of how our criminal justice system is built right now.
So right now, the system is we are arresting less people, but we are putting them in jail for longer. We have harsher sentences.
Right.
You are suggesting that it would be more of a evidence-based solution if we arrested more but put them in jail for less time.
That's right. Exactly. So if we were to focus our attention and resources on police investigations, on solving more crimes faster, that will, the consequence will then register for people, because right now what we've set up is a lottery, essentially. Like if you're really, really unlucky, you get caught for the crime you committed.
And you go to jail for the grand jackpot time.
That's right. And so most people rightly assume that if they steal a car, they're probably not going to get caught. They're right? They're probably not going to get caught. And so if we can switch that to be, you're probably going to get caught. And even if the consequence is much lower than what they face now, that will deter behavior much more than our current system does. So I'm going around, my team at Arnold Ventures is going around and talking with lawmakers about this evidence and really trying to convince folks to shift our public resources, our tax dollars. Prison is really expensive. Making prison sentences longer is really expensive. And so if we can shift even a portion of those dollars into police investigations to help police solve more crimes faster, we'll get a much bigger bang for our buck.
So if we're going to take these ideas and put them into practice, that would mean less on the side of like mandatory minimums and looking at gigantic prison complexes, because you are looking to either parole people or have just smaller sentences for these crimes. But we are shifting that into, a shoe leather on the ground police force kind of stuff.
Yeah. Hire more detectives, more training for detectives. It turns out detectives in this country don't get much training. So we're actually working with a partner organization to build a detective school and roll it out as a randomized trial.
Hold on. What is the baseline training for a detective?
Yeah. So in most places, police officers get a ton of training, but the promotion to be a detective is often based on seniority. So you just kind of learn on the job as you become more senior and you're doing that new job. And so
you're just a beat cop, and then you've either been there long enough, or let's factor in any kind of politics that goes into any job where people get promotions. I don't want to single out cops per se. I assume it's a lot of the same human ideas, but you just get kind of kinged. You just become sort of like a super cop, and now you're a detective.
Yeah. And, we can give departments the benefit of the doubt and assume they're trying to pick people they think will be good at this. But the reality is we just haven't, as a country, invested really heavily in figuring out how to do this. We've let this skill and this muscle slip a bit. We focused really all of our attention on the longer prison sentences and not enough on how to solve more crimes faster. So having, helping people invest in their skills as detectives and investigators, but also you can think about all the high tech tools that are available. Having more cameras, DNA databases, all of those kinds of things. Yeah. Those are going to increase the probability of getting caught too. And, they come with potential privacy costs. And so we need to have that conversation and figure out how to do this in a way people are comfortable. But those are the sorts of tools where a little bit of money could go a long way.
You know this very well from this area of research, that one of the tricky parts about these questions is that you are not talking, on an abstracted level, you can talk about federal funds that would be allocated to cities around the country, but we all know that the higher up the money, by the time that it gets to a lower down level target, it oftentimes is not exactly what you would have wanted. You are thinking more locally from a state or city perspective to fund a lot of these things. Is there a city now that you would look at as a model that is doing things better than average?
So not a specific city. We're doing a lot of work at the state level. So most of the conversations I have are with state lawmakers and talking about grant programs as you're discussing. So we have been supporting a type of bill or model bill called the Victim Act that is basically trying to help local law enforcement solve more crime. And so it's modeled off of federal COPS grants, which have been used for a long time to provide more resources to police departments across the country. These Victim Act funds would provide resources specifically targeted at increasing clearance rates or solve rates for crimes. And so we're seeing these. What's really exciting about this, I think, is this new way of thinking about this problem, and this new potential solution kind of breaks up the stale old political conversations we're having. So typically we have like the far left is saying this is all a matter of poverty, and we have to solve poverty if we're going to reduce crime. And you've got the far right that says some people are just bad people and we have to lock them up forever. And I think like the middle 90% of the country looks at that and says, those are our options. Like those both seem crazy, right? And so coming in and saying, actually just solving more crime faster, that's what's going to really work. People who are inclined in a more tough on crime direction are happy to shift their attention there. And people on the left who care about the communities that are suffering from violent crime, that aren't getting the accountability and justice for victims, they also are on board with accountability for people who have actually done real harm. And so we're seeing bipartisan coalitions of lawmakers, introducing bills in places like Michigan, Utah, Texas, Pennsylvania, really just states all over the country, which is really cool.
When we think about crime, like city-based crime, and this is something that I feel like I can speak as a tremendous expert, having lived in Oakland and now Austin. But when people think of city crime, in my opinion, they often think of either what you've mentioned, kind of crimes of opportunity, theft, carjacking, smash and grabs, that kind of stuff, muggings. And then there is the related but semi-separate issue of kind of chronic homelessness or vagrancy that goes on top of that. I would have gone over the moon if somebody had suggested that there was going to be a targeted enforcement when I lived in Oakland on muggings and smash and grabs, like these and bippings, as they call them, smashing out your window and taking things from your backseat of your trunk. This is like, I think a clear lower level of crime that, for a certain population, you can turn your head for long enough. But I do think that it's corrosive to population retention. It's corrosive to quality of life.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if we are at a breaking point with some of this stuff, or at least and this is the way we look at it on this show, is this an opportunity for a politician to have an issue that does have popular support? Because I don't think anybody is on the side of more muggings and smash and grabs.
Right. They're certainly not going to run on that platform. Yeah, I do think it's a huge opportunity. Again, I think our public conversation on criminal justice policy has been really stale for the past decade or so. And it really is like these two camps have emerged, and they're just like, they're planting their flags, and both of the positions I think are not appealing to most Americans.
They just seem like over fixations, because the way that you put it, I think, was correct, where it's like, okay, well, either you want to solve capitalism or you want to just find the bad seeds and bury them as deep underground as possible, so they never deal with it, so we never have to see them again.
Right.
And it's not to say that there's not chronic problems with poverty that we can deal with. And it's not to say that there aren't some people that are the worst of the worst of the worst that do deserve the kind of gigantic sentences that are often handed out. It just seems like a fixation on edge cases that leaves apart everybody else that gets their car broken into or gets stuck up or has their car stolen, where now it's just a regular thing you have to deal with, where everybody shrugs and says, well, that's insert city. And the fact that I can't even name one city where everybody would say that shows you it's a chronic problem, because you have the same thing in DC that you have in Oakland, that you have in LA and certain other places where it's like, I guess, let me ask you the question. The thing that people on the right will say is that a lot of this is brought on by lax prosecution from district attorneys. And that is something that has very much been a point of fixation over the last 15 years, that our desire to keep people out of prison, to solve the problem of people going to prison too much, was to just not charge them. From your point of view in researching this, is there any merit to that argument?
Yeah. So I do want to say up front, like, I think, we've seen a bit of a backlash to the traditional criminal justice reform movement over the past several years, because I think that movement lost sight of public safety. And they were really 100% focused on reducing the harms of the system. And that is important. Yes. That is a cost, right, of our interventions, and we should keep those in mind. But those interventions also have a benefit, which is reducing crime and keeping communities safe. And crime is really costly to communities. And then on the flip side, I think the far right has been totally focused on the harms of crime and not at all about the harms of the system. And I think, the reality is both of those sets of harms are important. And the benefits are also important in terms of crime reductions. And so, we have to be able to weigh these different trade-offs. On the question of progressive prosecutors and thinking about this question of, could we reduce the heavy-handedness, say, of the criminal justice system, and would that have benefits? I was super skeptical going into
or just any handedness oftentimes, which is really my friend. Just any kind of hand at all being involved, let alone the heavy variety.
Yeah. So I think, everyone would agree that if someone's an active public safety threat, they should be off the street. That is the person we should detain pre-trial. And that is the person that jail and prison are for. That's how we prevent crime. The difficult piece is figuring out who is a public safety threat, right? And it's harder to guess than people might think. And anything could look like a red flag in retrospect. And we're never going to prevent all crime. The optimal amount of crime is not zero. That is my general view as an economist, right? The costs of what we'd have to do to get to a zero crime society. We would not want to live in that society. But there are, so I think we across the country, cities across the country, the pendulum swung too far in the direction of lifting, of hands off people, especially for low level offenses. And that's where we're seeing the backlash in places like San Francisco, New York, Pennsylvania. And really those places have cracked down. So, you're talking about the bipping, the breaking into cars in San Francisco and Oakland. I know in San Francisco, at least, my understanding is that problem has been almost eliminated because they did finally just cracking down on those. It's not that hard to prevent and catch these guys, right? You just sort of have some.
When my MacBook was stolen out of my car last year in Oakland, I knew where it went because it tracked it there. So it wasn't. Right. It is not a unsolvable crime. This isn't the Maltese Falcon to figure out, where my missing stuff went.
And I think in San Francisco they were doing some I'm forgetting the exact word, but having decoy cars with stuff in them and waiting for people to break into them, and then the cops would arrest them. And
everybody knew where stuff was going. They knew where it was being sold aftermarket. Yeah. They knew largely who was doing it, and it's not. There are areas where it is high traffic. Yeah. I don't know if it's gotten better in Oakland since last fall.
Yeah, I don't know about
I was a victim of it, but
Oakland and San Francisco are different cities, different administrations. The point is, we agree, this is a policy choice, right? It's a policy choice we're making to go after some types of crimes and not others, and some type of offenders and not others. And I think we've really struggled over many decades with figuring out what to do with these really low-level offenders who are cycling through the system clearly because they're struggling with some sort of mental illness or poverty
Yes.
or something like that. And it feels to us, I think the reason that's felt difficult seems obvious that just putting that person in jail is not going to address the root problem they were facing. But having no consequences for bad behavior leads to more bad behavior, right? Like we know that. And so what do we do with these folks? And so that's where, I'm really interested in places just trying stuff. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to just like have a debate about it and figure it out. We're going to have to come up with a bunch of ideas, go out into the real world, try them, see what's most effective in different places, and then scale the solutions that are working. And so for one example of a study in this space that I did with Amanda Egan and Anna Harvey, some colleagues of mine, we went to Suffolk County, Massachusetts, where Boston is located, and looked at the decision about whether a prosecutor decided to move forward or just drop a low-level nonviolent misdemeanor case. So these are, these courts are flooded with these cases. This is shoplifting, trespassing, public drug use, that sort of offense. So exactly the offenses we're talking about. And if you're on the progressive prosecutor side, you would say prosecuting someone for these cases is just pulling them into the system and making things worse. If you're on the tough crime side, you would say, dropping the case would just embolden them. There are no consequences. You're going to keep doing it. So what is it? Which one is it? And we found a natural experiment in that case where cases are randomly assigned to different prosecutors. Some are more lenient, some are more harsh. So by luck of the draw, some people get lucky, get a lenient prosecutor. Their case is dropped. And it turns out if you're that lucky person whose case gets dropped because you had a lenient prosecutor, you are 50% less likely to come back with new charges in the future. So you're 50% less likely to reoffend in the future.
Okay.
So in this case, the progressive prosecutors are right? Like there was a criminogenic effect or a crime-producing effect of pulling people into the system if it was their first case. If it was the first time in court.
Okay.
Now I talk about this and then people usually on the internet say, but this person's been through the system 37 times. And it's like, okay, that is a different problem, right? Clearly that would not work for that person, right? But the point is erring toward leniency for someone's first offense can be really useful. And then the people who come back, well, then we have to do something else.
Now, all of a sudden, you're like, okay, everybody gets one, like the Spider-Man and Family Guy.
Right, and then it does become complicated because you don't want a policy where just like everyone gets one free shoplifting charge. Like that would be bad. But you could think about
you don't want to hard code that, but but there is something to it.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, maybe that is it's like, you want to at least know that it's like, okay, if you do get your first time offense will be looked on lighter, which I would guess is probably a general case anyway. I'm sure judges and prosecutors probably look at first time offenders less than they do repeat offenders.
Absolutely.
But
just moving the needle a little bit more. So that's where I think also the conversations about this, you've got like left-leaning prosecutors and right-leaning prosecutors, and people think that the more liberal, progressive prosecutors are dropping all the cases and the tough on crime prosecutors are prosecuting all the cases, but it doesn't go 0 to 100. It's more like 60 to 40, right? Or like or 40 to 60. So it's moving the needle within. It's like, how many of the cases are we dropping? Because they just cannot prosecute all the cases. That wouldn't be a good use of their time.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. If you wanted our election recap, then you had to be on the Substack, our immediate election recap. Now, normally I would be using the A block to talk about the election, but we got more news. And so, down the bench it goes. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Thank you to everybody who does it. We really, really love and appreciate you. Okay, let's talk about those elections because we have some follow on from that. John Cornyn and Ken Paxton pushing toward a runoff. Donald Trump comes out yesterday and says, look, I'm going to make an endorsement. Whoever I endorse, I'm going to ask that the other person drop out of the race. The rumor, according to The Atlantic, is that John Cornyn is going to be the one to get that endorsement. And based on the retweets of Chris LaCivita, who is running the Cornyn campaign, I would agree that that is the most likely scenario. Well, Ken Paxton comes out and says, look, I'm not dropping out. I don't care who Donald Trump endorses. I'm not dropping out. I believe that John Cornyn is beatable. They spent a lot of money and couldn't even get over 60%. And, that's that. He came out today and said, look, if the Senate passes the SAVE Act, then I'll consider dropping out. Are we on the way to some kind of mediated settlement? Is there an appointment that Ken Paxton can make that would assuage the base? We'll see. The reality here is that John Cornyn is probably the better general election candidate. The Democrats are certainly more worried about John Cornyn than they are Ken Paxton. They are salivating for Ken Paxton. And Ken Paxton is draggable scandal-wise. He can say all he wants that, they had to dump $70 million on me to drag my poll numbers down, but they did, and they came down. Do you think that you're not going to see a tremendous amount of money that's going to get dropped on your head from Tallarico? Because I'll guarantee you, it's exactly what's going to happen. There are rumors that there's another shoe to drop with Paxton. I don't know where to categorize it, just so you guys know. There might have been another dalliance for Ken. And maybe there's a consequence to that dalliance. And maybe that consequence was resolved with taxpayer money. Anyway, no idea if that's true. Came across my radar. We'll see whether or not it happens. People that I talked to said they'd heard it, but nobody has receipts. We'll find out. The other big topic during the election is that Tony Gonzales is now going to a runoff with Brandon Herrera. He did that 2 years ago. This time, Brandon Herrera got more votes during the election, the primary night, than Tony Gonzales did. Tony Gonzales, of course, scandal-plagued as he slept with a staffer. And later, that staffer killed herself. So for the first time ever, Tony Gonzales came out onto the Joe Pags show and admitted that he did have an affair with his staffer. Indeed, he said he had reconciled with his wife and he had reconciled with God. He said he had sought God's forgiveness and he had received it. I'm not a particularly religious man, so I didn't know that God gave receipts like that, but apparently he did, so good for Gonzales. The problem is he has now admitted on the record that he slept with a staffer, which is an ethics violation. And with there being an ethics investigation that is now ongoing, it appears that there is a critical mass enough within the Republican caucus to suggest that he needs to drop his reelection campaign. That from the combined leadership. What does that mean? Well, I'll give you my read on it. I think what it means is they are saying you need to drop out now because it doesn't matter if you win. You've already admitted on tape that you did the thing that we could kick you out for, and we'll kick you out. So even if you win, you're not going to win. It's over, Tony. The only question is whether or not you believe it's over. A point that was made on Twitter that I would like to echo here is for all the old heads who remember the Gary Condit, Shonda Levy situation. If you sleep with a staffer and then that staffer later dies, there is no comfort that the American people have to you saying, I'm not the reason she died. The bigger problem is that you slept with the staffer. And unfortunately for you, like many, many people who sleep with their staffers, there is now a larger tragic consequence that has brought all that to the fore. Tony Gonzales also called the widower of his now dead staffer, Gay. I've heard through back channels that that is not true. He denies it at the very least. Okay. One last thing, and that is who is going to replace Markwayne Mullin? We don't know. There's a lot of names that are floating out there. Two things to keep in mind. Number one, Kevin Stitt, the governor of Oklahoma, is going to be the one who names it. He's fighting with Donald Trump right now, so it might not exactly be somebody that Donald Trump likes. That being said, Oklahoma is a bit of a weird state. The person that gets named to this seat to fill it immediately is legally unable to run for it. So whoever gets it, it's going to be a quick trip. They get the title, and then they're going to be out. They cannot legally run for it in the special election. So there will be a real special election here. You're going to see a big fight about it, and eventually someone's going to get named to it for the rest of Markwayne Mullin's term. But it's not going to be somebody who is immediately named. With that being said, I have an Oklahoman who would love to have a title and would have no qualms immediately relinquishing the position because he has no interest in actually running for that seat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, I would like to draft Andrew Heaton. And I have already pitched this to him, and he has said, I'm in. So I want you to @reply Governor Stitt of Oklahoma and say draft @Mighty Heaton on Twitter. He is standing ready to serve. He'll take any vote you need. He already lives in D.C. He doesn't need to be moved anywhere. He is there to fight for the good people of Oklahoma, and he's ready to go. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, where you need to go if you want to support this show. 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And now, back to Jennifer Doleac.
Here's the other thing that I think is kind of downstream of this, but people don't think of it. And yet it often goes hand in hand, especially in some of these cities that have had persistent crime problems. If you don't have a solid floor for criminality, where a certain level of criminality is punished, and questions of exactly how long you go to jail, we can have that, or prison, we can have that dialogue. But if you are not being arrested for things that the average citizen looks at and says, well, wait, hold on, is that legal? Why is that a thing? If I look that up, there's a law that says they can't do that. Then it also affects the social services that lay on top of it, the safety net that's there. Because in my opinion, and again, this is just my own lived experience of being in big cities that often have very big hearts when it comes to empathetic, robust social safety nets for people that are falling through the cracks. If you can do both, break the law and enjoy the social safety net, you will.
Yeah.
Like, and it degrades public sympathy. It degrades the ability that people want to keep these systems in motion. I think it is a challenge. Well, I'll leave it a challenge and not say a possible graft effect by some of the people and NGOs that run these programs. But like, I think that they go hand in hand. I think you do need a solid, firm criminal justice policy if you actually want to strata out people who do desperately want help and can be provided help by the state. Because I think that part of the issue that we have now, especially in a lot of these big cities where the budgets for these programs continue to go up and it doesn't appear that there's progress being made, is not necessarily because the programs are poorly run, although some are, but it's not necessarily because of that. It's because if you've got a population that is not going to face any kind of criminal repercussions, then you're going to mix in two groups that don't necessarily have the same goals. They don't have the same goals of getting better. And that's what every one of these programs are stated and funded to do, is help people better their station in life.
Yeah, I think I think it's helpful to think about, we have both carrots and sticks at our disposal.
Yes.
Right. And so
Yes.
I think the ideal scenario is that we can, well, let me back up. In general, most people grow up and grow out of crime. Like in general, crime is a young man's game, right? You do a lot of dumb stuff when you're 18 years old, especially if you're drinking with your friends. And most people do grow up and become less impulsive, less reckless. And also even people who don't have that stark age effect that we generally see in the population, people do hit points in their life where they're like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I don't want to just be cycling back through jail and prison. Like, I want better for myself. And we need something there for them to give them that opportunity to change when they're ready for it.
Yes.
And so that's where, the public safety net does come in. And we want to have food stamps, and we want, all of these other things to be available to people, even if they have a criminal record, especially if they have kids.
Yeah.
If they're kids, it's going to affect the kids' trajectory. So there is something about like having the opportunities there and the safety net there for people when they're ready to change. And also we need to know that people need to know that there is going to be some accountability if they don't change, right? So it can be, we can offer the carrot if you do that, if you behave well and you want to change, we have these opportunities available to you. But if you don't, then we're going to catch you. Like we're going to catch you. And that's a very sure thing. And so a lot of these questions become like, how can we speed up, like what I'm interested in as an economist is like, what interventions can we use to try to speed up this process where a lot of people will naturally reach a point where they're just ready to grow up and clean up their act? How can we facilitate that? To speed up that process and also to make sure we can, really leverage those moments when they do arise. And right now we're doing a very bad job of that. We're just sort of like, I think most people assume like some people are just bad people. And so we just don't want to support bad people. And the reality is most people are not pure evil or pure good, right? There's a mix and people do bad things. And it's better for all of us if we can help them, create a more stable life that doesn't involve criminal behavior.
I do have to ask you about the homelessness and vagrancy question and whether or not that factors in there, because I do think that is, if there is a defining trend of my lifetime for big cities, things that did not exist in the same way when I was in my 20s, that it does now in my 40s. It is in our most populous, rich cities, you see public vagrancy and homelessness. It has been an incredibly tricky thing to deal with. I think some cities have dealt with it a lot better than others. The question that seems to stall those that have the biggest problem is how much of vagrancy or homelessness should be a crime and how much should it be punished by you going to jail. What does your research show on that? Yeah,
there really isn't a lot of research on this yet. I mean, I think we're pretty far from having what's the optimal policy here. I do think that this is part of the conversation about disorder in general, where I think part of the progression that we made as a society post-COVID was this conversation about we might be uncomfortable with the idea that we're giving someone who is clearly just sick or poor, and that's the reason for their continued criminal behavior, or for living in an encampment or the public drug use or whatever. It doesn't feel, it's not like a violent crime, right? And so it's not as bad as if they were committing assault or murder. And clearly they need some other help. Jail isn't going to cure them of whatever the problem is that they have. And also, if we live in a city, there I think is this idea, this sense of there's like a social compact that we should all be able to abide by. And in order for a city to be a thriving community, we can't have people shooting up on the sidewalk. Like that just can't people don't want to live like that. And I think coming to the collective decision,
especially when you're paying the mortgages and rents that are usually in the areas where those things are happening.
That's right. And I think, this is something where the economist in me generally just says, like, look, we're going to take everyone's preferences as given. I think it is generally okay that different communities are going to draw a line at different places and say, this is the amount of that behavior we're willing to tolerate. And it might be up here, it might be way down here. But at some point, if you don't want people engaging in certain behavior, then there needs to be some consequence for it. And so is, a criminal record a good thing? Well, I mean, my research on the first time defendants showing that avoiding that first criminal record is really helpful. I bet, if the first time you're arrested for camping on the sidewalk, a lot of people would consider that a wake up call, or at least like realize I need to go somewhere else, right? That I should not be camping here. And that would work, right? We don't need to give them the criminal record and a lengthy prison sentence in order for there to be consequences. Now, other places have tried using tickets, but I think just sort of like increasing the probability of any consequence would be really helpful. And then I think reducing the weight we generally put on like how severe should the consequence be. It just turns out it doesn't really matter as much as in these cases. It's like, you camp somewhere for 2 months and then all of a sudden you're in jail for it. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to have like a consistent response in order to change behavior.
Something should happen within 12 to 24 hours, ideally, even if the interdiction is not particularly consequential. There needs to be a persistent idea that this is bad. You cannot do this. Right. This is not what happens in this city.
Right. And for homelessness more broadly, I mean, to the question of like, well, how do we make sure people have places to live? It's like, well, build more housing, I think would be my number one prescription, right? This is just
that's why I wanted to, even in that question, separate the idea of homelessness and vagrancy, because I do think that they are two different issues where, they're obviously related, but nobody in general, especially in, progressively minded liberal cities like I've lived in most of my life, would say, oh, we don't want to deal with homelessness. We don't want to aid people in homelessness. We spend millions of dollars every year on solving this problem in a way that does not seem to have gotten us a lot of traction on the issue. In fact, by the numbers, the headcounts have often gotten larger. So there is obviously a broken pipeline between our empathy to help solve this problem versus the results that are happening, which oftentimes to me gets to vagrancy versus homelessness. If you were sleeping in your car because you are missing on a rent payment and you don't have anybody locally, then there is, I think, a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of empathy to solve that problem. If you are living paycheck to paycheck and you just can't afford rent and you desperately want to get in somewhere, then yes, that's a housing constraint where we do need to build more and we do need to push rents down on apartments and stuff like that, or even create novel stuff that we've largely phased out, like efficiencies that are not the same kind of apartment that we would normally think of, but for people that are in that homelessness to homed situation can be very helpful because they are cheaper.
Yeah.
And then there's the vagrancy side, which is oftentimes the poster children for it, which are repeat offenders, mentally ill, and drug users oftentimes, at least in every bit that I've seen on it. And in that case, there does need to be a different, we're dealing with a different problem. It needs a different toolkit than somebody that, is the victim of domestic violence and doesn't have money to get them and their kids into an apartment right now. And so they're sleeping in their car. I think these are very different problems that we need to deal with differently. Yeah.
I have a quote in my book from the San Francisco sheriff that was talking about the San Francisco's moves to try to clear some of the encampments and the public drug use. And he said something along, I'm not going to remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, I'm never going to tell you that jail is going to cure someone's addiction, but the threat of jail could be the incentive someone needs to go engage in treatment, to go get treatment, right? And so you have to have the treatment available, but you have to have consequences that will push you in that direction. And so I do think like that's the place where thinking of the criminal justice system as part of the solution is helpful.
Yeah.
Now, what you're describing also gets to, I think, what is a really complicated question, which is another thing that that jurisdictions are really struggling with, where we don't have great evidence on what exactly they should do. But for people who are struggling with untreated mental illness or substance use disorders, and they don't want help, right? So I think they're the people who are on the streets, and because there's no room in the shelter, and then we build another shelter and they're happy to take a room. And then there are people who are like, no thanks, I'd rather be outside. And it's like, okay, what do we do for that person? Especially if we can see that they might be, there's a world in which they could be a threat to someone, right? And usually I think the harder question is people who are not obviously a threat to other people. They're just, clearly not in their right mind and sort of disruptive to the neighborhood and the community. And so then you see cities having more conversations about like, well, when should we be using civil commitment? Like when should
involuntary commitments or what we used to think of as, sanitariums and stuff like that, which were largely closed down in the 70s.
Right. And we didn't like the way that those institutions were run then. And so I think no one would want to just recreate that world. But I think we shut those down and then just like shunted everyone into the prison system. And that isn't working either. Right. So there is, I think we're just kind of grappling with like, there is always going to be some segment of the population that needs treatment and doesn't want it. And and different communities are going to have different comfort levels for like where to draw the line that we say, sorry, it's up to you. You don't get to decide anymore. Like the state is going to step in and take care of you. And that is a really complicated situation. And obviously it's just like nobody wants that problem, but it is, I think, a fundamental part of this conversation.
There is a line of thought, and I don't know whether or not I would fully agree with it, but I've agreed with it more than I thought I would over time, that like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did more damage to society than Leni Riefenstahl. That, there is a problem that we had with removing that layer, as uncomfortable as it is, and as bad as it is to think about the idea that somebody who is just a different kind of thinker could end up in a sanitarium or something like that. That is an uncomfortable thought, but I don't know if we are better with, all these years in the background for either putting more people in prison or now just kind of leaving them out on the streets. Like I don't think that either of those were meaningfully better than what we had before, even if it had serious problems.
And obviously this is like the most extreme scenario. It's the worst case. It's like someone needs treatment and will not accept it.
But this is, every town that has chronic homelessness
is grappling with it.
They're the mascots. Like those cases. Yes, they are edge cases. Yes, they're not everybody. You shouldn't design an entire system, but you do need to design a system that deals with that kind of person, because they are the most visible and oftentimes the ones that create the scenarios that are the most unfortunate.
Totally. And so then the conversation sort of becomes, well, okay, if we know that mental health treatment, access to mental health care is really important, which it is. Even, we've got this segment of the population that doesn't want it, but like, okay, if we're going to mandate it in some way, they need care. And then there are a lot of people who do want it, or would engage if it were offered. And we have a massive workforce shortage in this country of mental health workers. And so how, what are the policy levers we can pull then to get people into care they need? And sometimes, this is a place I am optimistic that there will be some AI tools that are specifically designed to try to mimic therapists and could be better than nothing, which is what a lot of people are getting. And then there's evidence that, just having warm handoffs. So there's a program in Johnson County, Kansas, where they took people who were churning through the jails there and they screened them for symptoms of mental illness. And anyone who's screened as having untreated mental illness, they, after they were released, they called them and just offered to make them an appointment at a local treatment facility. And that was it. That was the entire intervention. And they didn't follow up with them. They didn't drive them to the appointment, anything like that. But they just offered to make an appointment and made the appointment. If they just made it super easy, right, to go to the appointment.
Yeah.
And that intervention reduced recidivism by 17%. And it's just that's it, right? So some of the interventions we could think of are build major facilities. Like it's like the really tricky stuff to figure out how to grapple with where do we draw the line, and it's kind of becomes a constitutional question, all this stuff. And then there's some stuff that places are trying where, a lot of stuff we try isn't going to work, but some stuff we try does work. And so we see programs like this, and it's like, if this continues, like if we can replicate this and it continues to work, we should be doing this everywhere. Like this is such an easy win,
If there is a light touch solution, then we should just apply it more broadly.
For sure.
Jennifer Doleac, your book, The Science of Second Chances, available now. I know that your publisher has told you that everywhere they should buy it everywhere, and everybody should buy it anywhere that they possibly want. I know the authors can't say it, so I will say it. Publishers care about Amazon. Go buy it on Amazon and leave a review. That's what they look at. It's fine. It's fine. You're not allowed to say it. I can say it for you. Leave a review. Buy it and leave a review. Those are the biggest things that really, really matter. And I know that this is a phenomenal book. You're really going to enjoy it, especially if you've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you, Justin.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Will Saddleberg is our producer and our editor. I wanted to just throw a few of these in here. 1 week ago, we talked about America as a floor plan with Kevin Ryan. We got a few good emails about that. Alex wrote, the Pacific Northwest is the network closet. Detroit's the garage, Puerto Rico's the nursery, Guam is the panic room, Colorado is the gym, Tennessee is the bar liquor cabinet, New Jersey the driveway, and Alaska is the shed. Love all of these. Dr. Whiskey says Florida's the mud room. It's swampy, and it's where a lot of people come in from the outside. The South is the kitchen because everybody loves Southern cooking. Love, love, love both of those. Whenever there's something good, you have cooking in there. Bring it on in. If you want to email the show, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. It's where you can email cool things like that. You can find, follow, and share video clips of the show on TikTok, Justin R. Young, Instagram, Justin R. Young, and Twitter, Justin R. Young. If you would like to watch us on YouTube, it is Politics. Find us there, or find us on Substack. Substack TV gives you that full television experience right there through your Substack subscription, including the free subscription. Just boom. Beautiful footage of me. You can support us, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3 Cash. You can send me anything you like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Again, the only place where you can get our bonus content is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. And our foundational tier gets their name right at the end of the podcast, like these fine folks. Roll the tape, Will.
Sonny Black, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Nick, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, Neil, Casey, oh yeah, it's Adam, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Michael, Matt, TP4 Bongo, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Paul, Gloria Young, my mother, a dog named Checkers, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Stephen, and Zombie Doc.
That'll wrap it up for us. Great week, big news week. We had good elections. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. Very, very excited. More ads, more races, more polls. Maybe even the return of the pole dance coming up. Seen that out there in the ether a little bit. I think it might be time to dust off the old music. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.